I'm your host Callum, and today I'm joined again by Tom and Kerm as we continue our breakdown of all 18 teams ahead of the launch of Gameday Squad, Australia's first fantasy sport game built completely on the blockchain. Guys, awesome time out last time when we reviewed the Crows. If you haven't checked that one out already, go back and have a look at it. But how are you guys going this afternoon before we get into the Lions?
Dude, I'm so glad we're here to talk AFL because in the NBA, for the listeners who don't know, Tom and I are both Celtics fans, and we just had an excruciating loss thanks to Evan Mobley against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I can't even say their name. I don't want to say their name. How did that one sit with you, Tom? It's been a bad season so far.
Yeah, Kerm, you took the words right out of my mouth, mate. Evan Mobley, what a young star. We just couldn't keep up with him today, of course, coming off a back-to-back. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I'm going through enough pain already having to deal with the loss. But with talking about Evan Mobley, guys, Gameday Squad Australia has an NBA podcast where we do deep dives into fantasy breakdowns to help you get game day ready. So go check it out on Spotify and all your other good services.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are here, it means you are here for the AFL, so we will get stuck into it. And guys, we're going with a team that actually had a few more wins than the poor Crows last week, and that's going to be the Brisbane Lions. So to give a bit of a recap with how they went before we start taking the fantasy angle with it, they ended up having 15 wins, 7 losses, which was good enough to get them 4th place. As you remember, they had to just sneak in there over the end at the final game against the Eagles, where they had to win by that certain margin, and if they got that, then they'd pip the Dogs for that 4th spot, which they got. On top of that, the other highlights from the year, I would say, would have to be their 1-point win over the Pies. And as a club, it's their 3rd straight top 4 finish, which is actually the same as the Cats. So, and we know how good that footy club is. So, yeah, for the Lions to be at that level, it's definitely something for them to keep their head held high about. But unfortunately, as you can see there, they did go out in straight sets again, which is the second time now in 3 years, and it's actually their 4th finals loss in 3 years as well. So, yeah, it's a bit of a sour taste once again for the Lions at the end of the season. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get into how we thought and give them a grade a bit later. But let's just talk about players for now. Who do you guys have as your start of the year?
Yeah, so I'll kick us off with this one. Looking back into the preseason of 2021, we saw a 32-year-old Dane Zorko spend close to 80% of his time on the field in the forward line. Then tragically, as we know, Cam Rayner did his knee for the season and Chris Fagan was forced to chuck Zorko back in the guts. And boy oh boy did the magician have himself a season. He averaged 24 disposals a game, 16 of those being kicks, and averaging 6 tackles a game, which was a recipe for 125 GDS fantasy average on the season. His best fantasy output since 2017. The question now is he aging like a fine wine, or will we see a drop-off?
Yeah, great point there, Kerm. Zorko, he just seems to every year just find a way, doesn't he? Even when he wasn't expected to play in the midfield. But my star of the year is going to be Jared Lyon. He was undoubtedly the Lions' best player for the 2021 season, not only with his elite fantasy play, but his durability to play out all 22 games the season presented to the Lions this year. Lyon is currently 29 years old, but funnily enough, he had his best fantasy year since entering the AFL in 2012. So speaking of aging like a fine wine, I think we're on to another one here. He's never cracked the 100 fantasy points average until this season, averaging 117 points per game. A huge year for an aging Lion.
That's terrible. That is terrible. But I do have another aging Lion, as you would put it, and that's Daniel Rich, guys. He was my star of the year. He actually had 26 touches a game, 6 marks, which was actually got him 120 fantasy or game day fantasy points for the average, which is good enough for 3rd at the club and also 3rd best defender, which means if you stuck him in your back 6 and you left him there for the year, you probably would have done pretty well. He was also 22nd ranked overall in terms of all players, and it was, again, another player who easily had his best output in his 13-year career. What about on the flip side though, guys? Who did we have as some disappointments for the year?
I'm going to go after a bit of a cult hero here. Mitch Robinson, man. Last year was his worst fantasy scoring non-COVID season since 2013. He still mustered a respectable 19 disposals a game, but what really hurt him was his tackling. This was something he built his name on, and he could only manage to average 2.9 tackles a game. That's his worst seasonal average since his debut. So if you're going to look to add Robinson to your roster next season, you're going to hope he's going to want a complete 180 in that stat line.
Yeah, and look, my disappointment of the year, I think it's tough, but it's got to be Lachie Neale. He's been an elite talent in the league for years. He's always averaged around 100 fantasy points per game mark for fantasy managers, but in the 2021 season, he averaged his lowest fantasy points per game since 2014. But more notably, he only played 15 games this year for the Lions, and fantasy managers in dynasty leagues and for drafts won't be happy with that.
Yeah, I'm going to double down on that one. And again, bit of an interesting one when you actually consider where Lachie Neale finished overall. He's my disappointment. 28th overall in the total league, and he was actually the 5th highest person for the Lions. And I think that just tells you the expectation that were on him going into this season. Yeah, like you said, he just couldn't get on the park, and yeah, I think the people who would have gone out, and if you would have bought him at the start of the year and, hoping to have him as your captain, and you would have spent the money on him, then yeah, you would have been disappointed with the outcome. But yeah, potentially buy now opportunity at a great price. I did want to say 7 of the 17 games he played in, he did score over 100 points. So when he was on the park, he was in form, but it was just that inconsistency of not getting a run. So yeah, love him as a footballer, and it has nothing to do with that. It's just, the expectations on him, I think, were higher than anyone else. Before we wrap up talking about the Lions for this year, I wanted everyone to give your grade, what you gave them. So last week we grilled the Crows. You guys were a bit tougher on them than I was. So yeah, being a Port fan, I thought that was a bit of a surprise. But yeah, what did you guys have for your grades? I gave them a B-. I just think, for their team, their output and the injuries they had. You mentioned there before, Kerm, how they lost Hipwood, Rayner, but they also lost Hipwood during the season as well. And yeah, having Lachie Neale in and out, I think definitely a sour taste with those 2 finals, straight sets again. I think that does hurt. I would have had them a lot higher had it not been. But yeah, for me, I think a B- is probably fair for the year. What do you guys have?
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's that finals straight sets loss that, really leaves a sour taste in your mouth over the off-season. They have a very, very good list paired with one of the best coaches in the league for me. So it's tough, and I'm sure we'll see him up there again this coming season.
And look, I'm not going to be so harsh on them. We mentioned the injuries, and all of that considered, they still finished 4th. Yeah, they were very unlucky in the finals, of course, to go out, but one of their losses was only by 1 point. And when you're underdone in the finals, it's a tough ask already. So I've given them an A grading for the year. All things considered, I think they came out, they still fought all the way through the end. And it's just a very unlucky situation they had.
Wasn't expecting that. Yeah, there you go. After the harsh last week. So yeah, I think that gives them good enough for a B.
Drop the mic.
Yeah. That gives them good enough for a B. So you can see where the Crows, where we rated them last week. So again, yeah, go check that out if you haven't already. Alright, so if you are familiar with what we've been posting over at GameDaySquad.com, you'll understand the importance of a team's success and what that means to the output of their whole squad in terms of fantasy. If you haven't checked it out, we'll put a link in the description. Go ahead. But essentially what it says is that how a team performs is pretty important for the team's output and their fantasy scores. So in order to sort of help you guys be the best fantasy players you can be and compete on Game Day Squad to win that premiership, we really need to know where the Lions are going to be for next year. And that's what we're going to do in this segment. Just like we did last week, we're just going to break it down. Just look at this year for the win now players. So, guys, as you can see there, I've got the Lions sitting, I think next year they'll make the grand final. That's my prediction. I can see them coming anywhere from premiers down to about 6th. And where you can see on the curve there, you can see them slowly moving up. Yeah, there's a bit of stagnation over the last few years. They've been hitting that sort of heights. But when you think about it, in 2020, they got there by surprise. And I think, the last couple of years, a couple of injuries, different other things have come in the way. But I am expecting big things from the next year. And if you told me they won the premiership, I wouldn't be surprised. What do you guys think? Have I got that perfectly right?
I completely agree. Their list is too good and too talented, and as I said before, Chris Fagan for me is easily one of the best coaches in the league, so that's exactly where they should be and where they should be expecting themselves to be. Hopefully they get some health back and we'll see them right up the top.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. I agree with you. I was going to say as well, just imagine, with a healthy team, what they could have done in the finals this year. And then we're going to assume that all these players are going to come back, be ready to go next year. They've had the experience, they've had a bit of a taste now of playoffs footy. Everyone's getting a bit more comfortable. So I think that's bang on, mate. There could be grand final bound next year.
I wasn't expecting that. You guys to be smack on with that, but yeah, I shouldn't be surprised. I'm great at predicting sport. We're going to stop talking about the team now and actually get into some players. So how we break this up is we go, who are the players that are going to be in your best 22 come round one next year? Who are the players you've got knocking on the door? And who are players you've already got a big red line through and you're not going to be touching? Who wants to kick us off with the Brisbane Lions?
Let me tackle this one first. So I've got one player for each of these. In my best 22, I'm definitely going to be having Hugh McCluggage. He ticks all the boxes. He's young, a proven ball winner, great fantasy performer, and he should be viewed as a must-add for just about everybody's squad, no matter whether you want to win now or win in the future. Knocking on the door of my squad is actually Cam Rayner. So, as I mentioned in my Star of the Year sort of section with Dane Zorko spending 80% of his time in the forward line in pre-season, the reason was actually Cam Rayner. He was spending a ton of time in the middle, and it's when Brisbane drafted this guy, they wanted him to sort of be like a Christian Petrarca type midfielder, sort of hard-nosed, ball-winning, inside 50 kicking, scoreboard affecting midfielder. Obviously, so far that hasn't panned out, but he also hasn't had the continuity on the field to reach those levels. So I'm going to take a punt, leave him on my squad on the bench, and see what he can do. And player to avoid is going to be my disappointment of the year. It's going to be Mitch Robinson. I think at this point we've sort of seen the best from Robinson. We know that he's going to have massive games and make, headline-making plays every now and then, but I don't think that's going to translate to fantasy anymore, so I'm going to be leaving Mitch Robinson out of my team.
Interesting.
Yeah, nice three there, mate. Well, let me get right into it, hey, with mine. My best 22 or win now player in drafts next year. It's the window's closing for this guy. It's going to be Lyon. He perfectly fits in the category of win now, obviously, of course, due to his age and his expected decrease in fantasy production over the next season or two. We'll see a gradual decline in his game. It's very unclear how steep his hit is going to be of fantasy production, but we all know here that he at least has another great fantasy year in him, and he's a perfect win now candidate in drafts. Knocking on the door, it's going to be your best 22 pick, Kerm. It's going to be Hugh McCluggage.
Nice.
He had his best fantasy season last year. We've already touched on this, averaging just over 100 fantasy points per game. And he's at the young age of 23 years old. And you mentioned before he played all 22 games throughout the year. So he's looking good, fit and healthy coming into next year. He's knocking on my door. And my player to avoid, it's going to be Dane Zorko. He's a club captain, a club legend, and it hurts me to put him in this conversation. But Zorko unfortunately has the same concerns as many other players that we've already mentioned in this podcast. It's age and his role with the team next year. Zorko's been an amazing player in the AFL for so long. He's produced some great AFL fantasy years for managers who are lucky enough to either trade for him or draft him. But I don't want to be paying a premium, for a name like Zorko next year, and he's going to be my player to avoid heading into the next season.
Yeah, with that pick, I guess we're thinking about sort of game day squad as well. So it's not just for this season. Obviously, that's important. That's what we're talking about here. But yeah, you've always still got one eye for the future. But we'll park that. We'll go to my picks, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a second. But guys, at my best, I had Lachie Neale. I actually was tossing up between him and Lyons, and for me, I just think Lachie Neale's elite when he gets it. I know I gave him a disappointment before, but yeah, I fully expect him to bounce back, and he's one of the competition's best. And as we know, there's only 5 spots in the midfield, and I think he's got one wrapped up. And the other one for me is Rich. So as I said there before, I gave him wraps. So yeah, top 6 back in the league. He's 31, but you just would think with the Lions still, if they can go back up top 4 again, I just think he'll be able to get enough of the footy there. So that means knocking on my door, we've got Cluggage and Lions as well. Cluggage was hard. Again, it just comes down to you get 5 spots in Game Day Squad and you can't fit all those midfielders in. But it's definitely nice to talk about a team with some actual people in my best 22 after last week. And guys, avoiding, I have Joey Danaher. Yeah, and I'm just going to keep piling the Crows all year while I can. Joey Danaher. So the thing that scares me with him, he did play all 24 games this year, kicked 46 goals. But before that, he played 15 games over 3 years. And for a big guy, that does concern me. And when you're looking at this, you just got to see, yeah, his upside, is it enough to sort of have him in your team? I'm like, nah, he's not banging on the door to get in one of those forward spots. And just with that uncertainty around his health, just for me, it just leaves me going, nah, listen, I want to put a line through him and not come back through. So, yeah, a few interesting names there. We've obviously got some differences. But yeah, tell us what you guys think, obviously, in the comments below. We are new to YouTube, so anything you can do to help us like and subscribe. See, we don't even know how to say it properly yet. So anything you can do to help us definitely will help grow the game. So yeah, thank you for your support there.
Alrighty, guys. So before we continue on looking through the Lions squad, we're going to go through something that's quite unique to our game. So the cards that you will be packing and using for fantasy are going to be broken up into tiers who have their own multiplier attached to them. So I'm just going to take you through them one by one really quick. We have the bronze card, which is a 1 multiplier. So that'll be used for sort of the free-to-play sort of players who want to just play the fantasy side of the game as opposed to packing cards. Moving on to some of the higher multipliers, you got silver, which is a 1.1 multiplier, gold, a 1.2 multiplier, platinum, a 1.3 multiplier, diamond, a 1.4 multiplier, and a legend, a 1.5 multiplier. Now, interestingly enough, there's a set amount of players per card. So there's an unlimited amount of bronze players in the game, 5,000 silver players in the game, 2,500 gold players in the game, 500 platinum players in the game, 100 diamond players in the game, and only 1 legend player in the game. Guys, what does this mean for you going into the season?
Just imagine pulling a 1-of-1 Jared Lyon or a Lockie Neal heading into the next fantasy season. You essentially are getting your multiplier, and if you were to pair that with a captain's bonus, that's a 3 times multiplier for fantasy stats.
You're laughing.
And wow, you're filling up the box score there, mate. There's plenty of stats to go around. You'll be to a red hot start.
Yeah, that sort of multiplier, you'd turn a this year's Neil into last year's Neil. It's that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm really looking forward to, you can go out and you can get a player. So for me, a massive Port Adelaide player I wish, fan, I can go after a player that I really love. So someone like Connor Rosie, or even here, another young star, Cam Rayner. If I believe he's going to come back from his ACL and he's going to be absolutely kill it, I'd go hard after getting one of those legend or diamond cards. And who knows, I could make a bit of money off that card. It's a fully peer-to-peer trading system. So if he turns into a bit of a star, I can make a bit of money off it, or I can keep him in my team and can see premierships come from that. So that's probably a good segue into our next bit, of course, which is talking about the dynasty potential of the Lions. So again, just to recap, unlike a normal fantasy or AFL fantasy or Supercoach, the players you have and the cards you own transfer from year to year. So if you own those cards that I was just speaking about, you Cam Rayner, Diamond or Legend, if you get him now, you pack him or you buy him, excuse me, he's going to be in your team for next year as well. So going back to the Brisbane Lions, guys, who do you actually have as a player that you think's an absolute future star that you'd be going after one of those sort of top tier cards for?
Sorry to sound like a broken record, but again, it's Hugh McCluggage. The guy has the potential to be one of the best midfielders in the league for a very, very long time. He's got all the potential in the world, so I'll be taking him, stashing him away for a long time, and hopefully, yeah, I'll see where he takes me.
And broken record 2.0 here. Hugh McCluggage. He's the former 3rd overall pick in the 2016 National Draft. I don't think we have to say any more than that. The talent is clearly there. It's why he was so highly regarded coming into the AFL. And he's in a great situation right now. We mentioned before the correlation between a winning culture for a team and fantasy production for players as well. So if you're in a midfield that's red hot and firing, it's only good things for players. And that's why I need to get my hands on a Hugh McCluggage on the ASAP before his price gets too expensive.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it's already heating up if two of you are going for them. I'll steer somewhere different, guys. I'll give you something else. I'll give you Zach Bailey. So, like I said before, game-winning goal after the siren against the Pies. Got him on my radar. I had heard of him, but it was that game I sort of knew who he was. And yeah, since there, he's just absolutely impressed me. I think he's still quite young. He was picked 15th in the 2017 draft. And he's actually in a strong midfield. He's categorized as someone who's elite for his goal scoring. So he's scoring 1.3 goals a game, which, as we know, one of the big things about game day squads is the 8 points you get for a goal, which is more than, say, an AFL fantasy. So a midfielder that can dominate a game and get his hands on the footy and kick goals is the players that are dominating in our sport. But what about, moving away from the sort of surefire guys? Excuse me, I'm losing my voice here. Moving on to players who you think maybe aren't a surefire thing, but potentially have a lot of upside that you'd be looking to build out your squad with.
So there's two here that I want to sort of take a dart throw at. One of them is Cam Rayner. There's still so many question marks about what he's going to bring to this team. And again, injuries that can't keep him on the field. So we don't have a lot of, I guess, of a sample size to understand what Cam Rayner's going to do. But I just don't want to miss out. I don't want to miss the train on Cam Rayner, just in case he does become the league winner that a lot of people thought he could be when he was drafted. So he'll be one. And I'm also going to buy a little bit of the Jared Berry pie. He's regressed a little bit in recent years, mostly due to injury again. But we've seen him almost average 20 disposals in the back end of the seasons in 2018 and 2019. He's a great user of the footy, and Chris Fagan seems to trust him a lot. I'll take the gamble on him and stash him to see what he becomes.
He's a good one. I almost put him on my list, so I'm glad you brought him up.
There you go.
Who have you got, Tommy?
Mate, my guy is going to be your player to avoid from before. It's going to be Joe Danaher. Now, we know about his talent and how good he was at Essendon, and although he won't be getting much ruck work, if any at all, in his new team, I want to see his fantasy production with a fully going midfield. Obviously, we've mentioned some of the outs they've had throughout the year. And with Zorko probably heading back into the forward line once their team is healthy, crumbing off Danaher, I think he's in a really good situation to become one of the leading goal scorers in the league. And I'm not confident with saying that, which is why he's my upside player. But watch out for him. He could have a breakout year all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, my thoughts on that. Even at his best, I don't agree with you, but yeah, I guess that's why we have fantasy sports, because you can prove me wrong if you are right. But I do agree with you though, Cam Rayner, my upside pick. So as you remember, number one draft pick. He's classified as a forward. I'd love him to stay that way for a long time. If he stays like that, that could be elite. If he goes into the midfield, different story. But yeah, definitely a lot of people have big raps on him. And yeah, watching him play, I just loved watching him play. I was actually really disappointed. So I grew up in Brisbane, so I got lots of mates up there, and they were heartbroken when he went down. He was probably, I think second to Lachie Neale, the club favourite there. So yeah.
Electric player, hey.
Cam Rayner at his best, man, is just, I mentioned Chris and Petrarca, and right now Cam Rayner can't even carry Petrarca's luggage, but you just see glimpses of it. It can be frightening.
Yeah, and I guess the question around him as a fantasy player is, how long does he stay classified as a forward for?
Yeah, exactly.
Because if he can get up to Toby Green level, which I absolutely think he can. Toby Green was the leading forward scorer in Game Day Squad for forward, if we'd run it back. So you sit there and be like, yeah, I think he's more talented than Green. He's definitely more lovable than Green. So yeah, it's just whether or not he gets moved into the midfield. And yeah, like we know, with there's strong midfield contention spots, but yeah, no, definitely someone you can put away in your squad, because that's the beauty about it. You can have as many players as you want in your wider squad. You just have to have a certain amount that you play in your active squad each week. So That's good, guys. I'm going to show you here now. This is our dynasty potential, and this is all my doing. And I want you guys, again, tell me like you did before. Tell me that I've got it right. You can see the descriptions of the tiers. You can see where we stuck the Crows last week. But, guys, I have the Lions competing for multiple premierships over the next 3 to 5 years. I think you obviously saw them. I put them in the grand final. You agreed with that, so I know you're not going to agree too much on it. But, yeah, did I get it right putting them in tier 1?
Yes. Yeah, you did. As smug as your face looks right now. Yeah, no, they should contend for a while. That they've got such a good talented young list with so many assets yet to be sort of unearthed. So, yeah, the sky's the limit. We don't even really know what that limit can be yet.
And considering you guys gave their season review a B minus and I gave them an A, I think you can sort of have an estimate here of what I'm going to go with, and it's a big yes. They clearly have the talent. They have great depth throughout their team as well. All these injuries last year, you sound like a broken record, but they were still able to manage, make the finals, put in a big effort. So they've got a great team. If they can keep this core group of boys together, who knows where they can go in the next couple of years.
Yeah, guys, fingers crossed they do. So I'll be back up in Brisbane next year, and I've got lots of Brisbane mates that will take me along to their games. And yeah, who knows? I bought Sydney Swans membership this year. I'll edit that bit out. I bought Sydney Swans membership this year, so yeah, who knows? I could be dragged along to some of the Lions games next year and maybe even get one of them. So, guys, I think that wraps us up for the Lions. A lot more exciting than last week's one for the Crows. What do you guys think?
Yeah, definitely a lot more excited to talk about this than the Crows. So hopefully we get a few more listeners too who are more excited to listen to the Lions.
Yeah, for sure. So shout out to everyone back in Brisbane. And yeah, of course, big thank you everyone to listening to this and watching us here on YouTube. We will be doing this for the other 16 teams, so keep watching, keep subscribing, and of course, check out Game Day Squad to hear more. And Tom, what do we have to do?
Make sure that you guys are getting game day ready.
Boom.